I actually came here tonight to share something with you that frustrates me. Now, half of you probably think, why does he do a TEDx talk about his frustrations in life? Maybe you should go see his shrink instead. The other half probably wonders, what will this be about, or is curious. I will try to use the next 13 minutes to convince you that my frustration has some relevance. If I fail, I can still go to the shrink on Monday morning, right? So, who of you thinks we need more innovation to solve environmental problems? Okay, that's, as far as I can see with the floodlights here, at least half. That's good. Who of you thinks it's difficult to bring environmental technologies to the market? Okay, that's also almost half. Who has tried before to bring something to the market? Okay, I have a few who suffered here in the room. That's good. Actually, it is something that I find incredibly frustrating, difficult. I meet lots of entrepreneurs who develop environmental technologies, and they are typically inspiring, energetic, passionate people, right? They come to me looking for investment and they want to change the world. And that's great. And then I see way too many of them not succeed, but struggle getting their idea to the market. And this is really something that frustrates me. So I started to think about what is the reasons behind this and what can be done about this. And I think we all can do a lot to help them be more successful. And imagine what impact we could have if many more of these innovators would succeed. It might not save the world, but it would surely make the world a greener and cleaner, hopefully a better place, right? So the first thing I need to get sorted out a bit is fundamental innovation, disruptive innovation versus incremental improvement. That's very important because what you have to do is very different if you have an incremental improvement versus a fundamental disruptive innovation. The way I define innovation is something that is fundamentally different from how it has been done before and that solves a relevant problem, and because of that gets widely adopted. And I will take two examples from the water industry to illustrate this. They are both related to the desalination of seawater to produce drinking water, which is in Spain very relevant, but also in many other parts of the world very relevant. There is many researchers and also many startups and companies trying to develop new membranes for seawater desalination, because the most common process to desalinate seawater is reverse osmosis using membranes. And all these membranes, they are interesting, they are novel, they are somewhat better than what is out there. But what is out there is actually really good already. And as a consequence, it's almost impossible to make it something fundamentally different. And hence, you will see almost none of these membranes on the market. Even the ones where the company is sold for 50 or 100 million to a big established company, the products quite often don't show up. Compare this to something like the energy recovery technology that was developed by a guy called Leif Haug in the end of the 80s. It recovers almost half of the energy needed to produce fresh water from seawater, and as a consequence, it cuts energy consumption in half, and it makes seawater desalination much cheaper and much more sustainable. There's a very obvious difference, right, between this incremental improvement and the disruptive innovation. Now, obviously, we also need incremental improvement, and we have lots of it. But incremental improvement is not enough to solve the environmental challenges we face. Now, I'm a commercial guy, I'm not an engineer, I never developed anything, I never invented anything. So I take a little bit of a commercial perspective to the problem of disruptive innovation. And as I said, it's about solving a problem. So solving a problem has two components if you're a commercial guy. Obviously, you need to technically solve a problem, it needs to work, but it also needs to be affordable. There need to be people who are willing to pay what it takes. Otherwise, you have invented something that nobody will pay for. That's fantastic, but it doesn't solve any problem. So I will just take two examples that are a bit older, a bit extreme, one, the other one very fresh, to illustrate this a bit. I talked about making the world a better place, right? There was a startup called Better Place, actually. Their idea was to solve the problem of battery capacity for electric vehicles. And their approach was, let's have a battery pack in the car that can be automatically replaced. So you drive onto the station where you put the car, the battery gets taken out, a new battery gets put in, and you can continue to drive. Not a bad idea, right? Problem is, it was 2001, 2, 3 where they did this, and there were hardly any electric vehicles on the market. You could just get basically one, like the Ford Model T. There was just one type of electric vehicle. And they burned through almost $1 billion before going bankrupt. And the problem is they didn't really solve a problem because there was no problem with reach yet because there were not enough electric vehicles. And also it was too expensive. So it's really sad, it was very creative, but in the end it failed. It's obviously easy to say in hindsight, right? If you take a more recent example, there's quite a few startups and companies that try to commercialize flights to the moon. Now, getting to the moon has been solved in 1969, quite successfully. And now these commercial space flight programs are nice, but do they really solve a problem? Probably not for any one of us in the room here, because we will never be able to pay what it takes for such a ticket, even if we're filthy rich. And I'm not even going to get into the environmental impact of space tourism, right? So this is what I mean when I take the commercial view, right? You need to solve a relevant problem, and you need to do so in a way that people can pay for it. Now, if we translate this to the environmental sector, you either solve a problem for which there is no solution yet, and there are people willing to pay for the solution you identified, or you replace something that's already out there. And if you replace something that's already out there, you need to do so in a way that is drastically better. In my simple world of numbers, you need to be at least 30% better or cheaper. Otherwise, it's not going to be a disruptive innovation. Now, why 30%? It's a very conservative industry. Your customers are utilities, the government, large corporates, and so on. So for a 5% improvement, they will not take a risk. They run on the principle of never change a running system. So if something works and somebody proposes something slightly better to you, they will probably decline. So if you have an idea about a new environmental technology, the first thing you should really do is check out, has it the chance to be disruptive? The easiest way to do so is to talk to customers and to talk to other companies active in this market and really do a business plan for your technology. Get the numbers right, understand the economics. And many of the innovators, company founders I meet, they have no idea about the economics of their technology compared to what is already on the market and what other people do. And then I sit down with them and we look at this and I say, well, this is even more expensive than what other people do today already. Yeah, it will not make it, right? So sort that out. If you come to the conclusion that you're probably not going to be disruptive, then it's not bad. You didn't fail. It's just an incremental improvement. We need that as well. But find a partner who has the customers already for this and go that way. If you come to the conclusion that you really found something disruptive, your problems really start now. Because most of the people who succeeded in the end said developing something was actually easier than bringing it to the market. And the sad truth is that the environmental sector is one of the worst sectors to be operating in. It is a sector that is, as I said, driven by people like utilities, government, and large corporates. It's also a lot driven by regulation, which is horrible, because it takes forever to be enacted, it takes forever to be implemented, and as long as it is not there, in many cases, you cannot sell your technology, because the regulation isn't there, and without regulation, nobody will buy it, because they get away with not solving the environmental problem. So, also there's not so much money in the system. There's just not loads of budgets to implement environmental technologies in most countries. And for an entrepreneur, as a consequence, time becomes the biggest problem. And for the customer, time is not of the essence. The customer has time. If he implements something a year earlier or a year later, in most cases, it doesn't matter. So when you take a normal technology to the market, it takes you, there's just an existing technology to a customer. It takes you 3 to 5 years between the first meeting and selling a relatively large project. If you have something completely new, it can take you 10 years. And you have to survive for the 10 years, right? Compare that to the innovation speed in the high-tech sector. It's just completely different how fast it gets adopted. People run through 6 generations of cell phones in that time period. People get 4 children in that time period. And that's what it takes to get one new environmental technology somewhat accepted in the market. So if this is what it is, then maybe there's other ways to go about it. And I have 4 pieces of advice for people who have an innovation. The first one is stay lean. Don't start spending a lot of money and building a large team and so on, because you have to survive these 10 years. And if you don't plan for that, then you're going to run out of money. And that is not nice, because that's called bankruptcy. So stay lean, make cost variable, get any grants you can get from any agencies, whatever. Find partners that help you with that so that you plan for that. That's the first thing. The second thing is don't be so protective of your idea. Reach out to established companies to help you, because they can maybe help you with the design, they can help you with the engineering, they can help you with the scale-up, which is actually very difficult, they can help you pilot, they can help you with customers. We own a company that treats water and wastewater, and we work with a ceramic membrane there. It's a really amazing membrane. If this ceramic manufacturer would try to sell this membrane, every customer would say, and it's expensive, and if it doesn't last long enough, and I'm not going to be the one who tries something new. If we integrate this into our system and sell the complete system to the end customer doesn't care so much because he cares that we solve his problem. He has bought systems from us before, so he's fairly relaxed with that, right? And that's how we are much faster in bringing something like that to the market. The third piece of advice is think about investors. If you want to get an investor on board, be very clear that you find one who understands the timeline we're talking about. Because investors don't have this patience normally. And if they don't have that patience, you're going to get into conflicts. And don't go for the investor that gives you the most money, but the one that understands your business and can help you with contacts. It's the only way to have a happy relationship with an investor for 5 to 10 years. There's a fourth piece of advice that's linked to all this. As I said, I'm the commercial guy. This is the business plan. Everybody obviously needs a business plan. And most of the business plans that we get can be unfortunately classified by the type of substance that was consumed when coming up with the numbers. Unfortunately, most of the time the substances are illegal. And crystal meth has a pretty high market share. To give you the most extreme example, we just got something a few months ago, a wastewater treatment technology. They have nothing now, and they wanted to have 1 billion euros in revenues in 5 years. Now, that's really incredible, right? I want that substance for my weekends, because I don't know what you can consume to come up with such numbers. But if you come up with these numbers, you create expectations, and you start to spend money and burn money, and it's a clear recipe for failure. The more realistic you are, the higher your chances of success. Now, we can't put all the blame on the innovators, obviously. That's not fair. Everybody else has to contribute as well. The technology users should at least be a bit more open to trying new things and have some sort of budget to give new technologies a chance. And in an ideal world, they also talk to other users of similar technologies so that not everything has to be piloted everywhere again. Because all the customers say, oh, can we test it? And then the test takes 2 years, and then can we then test it at a larger scale? If everybody does that, it will never work out. So we need to be more open and try harder, but also collaborate more between the users. Similarly, established technology companies should actively seek out entrepreneurs and innovators and try to work with them. It's not the way how most people operate, because it's all this not invented here syndrome. Many companies say if it's not invented internally, dangerous. But actually there's so many great ideas out there, and there's great ways to work with such innovators that can speed things up and also give you a chance to grow with amazing products. So it's good for both sides. Lastly, for the investor community, in my view, either stay away from the environmental sector or do it with the patience required. And do it in a way where then also you help the companies build the partnerships with strategic partners that they need to succeed. I think it's all of our obligation to make more of this happen, and there's enough that we can do. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, he said, it's one small step for man, it's a giant leap for mankind. If we do some of the small steps that I talked about, we will still not get to the moon, but hopefully we can make this world a better place. Thank you.